Ever wondered how a war really ends? It's not always with a final, glorious battle. Often, it ends with a pen, a piece of paper, and a lot of tense negotiations. Today, we're re-diving deep into one of the most important documents in American history, the Treaty of Paris of 1783. This wasn't just any treaty. It was the official birth certificate of the United States of America. Let's set the stage. The year is 1781. The smoke has just cleared from the battlefield at Yorktown. General Cornwallis has surrendered to a combined force of American and French troops, and the world is holding its breath. For all intents and purposes, the American Revolution was won. But winning the war on the ground is one thing. Winning it on paper is another. Britain, a global superpower, wasn't just going to hand over its colonies. The path to peace would be just as challenging as the war itself. So, who were the key players in this high-stakes diplomatic game? On the American side, we had a dream team of founding fathers: John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, and John Jay. Each brought a unique skill set to the table. Franklin, the seasoned diplomat, was already a celebrity in Paris, charming the French court. Adams was a brilliant but notoriously stubborn lawyer from Massachusetts, determined to secure every possible advantage for his new nation. And John Jay, a sharp New Yorker, was deeply suspicious of European powers, including their supposed ally, France. Across the table was the British representative, Richard Oswald. He was a Scottish merchant, not a career politician, which might seem odd. But he had business connections in America, and was seen as someone who might be more sympathetic to a favorable peace. The British government itself was in turmoil. The long, expensive war in America was incredibly unpopular back home. The Prime Minister, Lord North, had resigned. His successor, Lord Rockingham, wanted peace, but his sudden death threw everything into chaos again. It was under the new Prime Minister, Lord Shelburne, that negotiations truly began. Now you might think, okay, America and Britain sit down, sign a paper, done. But it was way more complicated than that. Remember, France had been America's crucial ally. They had provided money, troops, and their navy. Spain had also joined the war against Britain. So, this wasn't just a negotiation between two parties. It was a global affair. The French foreign minister, the Comte de Vergennes, had his own agenda. He wanted to weaken Britain, for sure, but he also wanted to prevent America from becoming too powerful. He was playing a long game, trying to balance power in Europe. This is where the drama really heats up. The American delegation had been instructed by Congress to do nothing without consulting the French. But John Jay had a gut feeling that something was off. He suspected Vergennes was secretly negotiating with Britain to limit American expansion, maybe even suggesting that the land west of the Appalachian Mountains should go to Spain or remain under some form of European control. He saw France not as a loyal friend, but as a manipulative puppeteer. Jay, along with Adams, decided to take a massive gamble. They broke their instructions from Congress and started holding separate, secret negotiations directly with the British. Benjamin Franklin, who had a deep affection for the French, was hesitant at first. But he eventually saw the wisdom in Jay's strategy. It was a bold, risky move. If it failed, they could have angered their only major ally and been left to face Britain alone. But if it succeeded, they could secure a much better deal for the United States. What did the Americans want? Their list was ambitious. First and foremost, absolute, unconditional recognition of their independence. No ifs, ands, or buts. Second, they wanted territory, and lots of it. They weren't just content with the 13 colonies. They had their eyes on the vast expanse of land stretching all the way to the Mississippi River. Third, they wanted fishing rights off the coast of Newfoundland, a vital industry for New England. And finally, there were the tricky issues of debts owed to British merchants and the treatment of loyalists Americans who had remained loyal to the crown during the war. The British, for their part, wanted to salvage what they could from the disaster. They wanted to protect the Loyalists from retaliation and ensure that their property would be restored. They also wanted American merchants to repay the debts they had incurred before the war. Most importantly, they hoped to drive a wedge between America and France, hoping to forge a new, profitable trading relationship with their former colonies. The British negotiator Oswald was surprisingly accommodating. He saw the potential for a strong economic partnership and was willing to be generous on the issue of territory. The negotiations were a masterclass in diplomacy, bluffing, and strategic thinking. Franklin used his charm, Adams used his legalistic arguments, and Jay used his shrewd, calculating nature. They played on Britain's desire for a quick peace and their fear of a continued Franco-American alliance. They convinced the British that a generous treaty was in their best interest. It was better, they argued, to have a strong, friendly, and independent America as a trading partner than a weak and resentful one tied to France. After months of back and forth, a preliminary treaty was signed in November 1782, without the French even knowing the details. When Vergennes found out, he was furious. He felt betrayed. He wrote a sharp letter to Franklin, who responded with his legendary wit and charm, managing to smooth things over and even secure another loan from France. It was a stunning diplomatic victory. Finally, on September 3, 1783, the definitive Treaty of Paris was signed by all parties: Britain, the United States, France, and Spain. The treaty was a monumental achievement for the young American nation. Let's break down the key articles. Article 1 was the big one. His Britannic Majesty acknowledges the said United States to be free, sovereign, and independent states. This was it, the official recognition they had fought and died for. The British Empire, the most powerful empire on earth, was officially acknowledging the existence of a new nation born from its own colonies. Article 2 defined the boundaries of the new nation, and what boundaries they were. The United States would extend from the Atlantic coast all the way to the Mississippi River in the west, and from the Great Lakes in the north down to the northern border of Florida in the south. This effectively doubled the size of the original 13 colonies, giving the new nation an immense territory for future growth and expansion. This was a huge concession from the British and a massive win for the American negotiators. Article 3 granted Americans fishing rights in the Grand Banks off Newfoundland and in the Gulf of St. Lawrence. This might not sound like a big deal today, but for the New England economy, it was absolutely crucial. John Adams, being a New Englander himself, fought tooth and nail for this provision. Other articles addressed the more contentious issues. Article 5 recommended that state legislatures restore the rights and property of Loyalists, though it was largely unenforceable, and many states ignored it. This was a major point of contention for years to come. Article 6 stated that there would be no more confiscations or prosecutions against anyone for the part they had taken in the war, and articles regarding debts ensured they would be paid. Finally, the treaty called for all British forces to be evacuated from American territory with all convenient speed. The signing of the Treaty of Paris marked the true end of the American Revolution. The war was over, independence was secured, and a new nation was officially on the map. The treaty was a testament to the skill and audacity of Franklin, Adams, and Jay. They had gone against their orders, outmaneuvered the seasoned diplomats of Europe, and secured a future for their country that was far grander than anyone could have imagined. But the story doesn't end there. The treaty left some issues unresolved. The exact borders were sometimes vague, leading to disputes with Britain and Spain for decades. The promise to protect Loyalists was mostly a dead letter, and many were forced to flee to Canada or Britain. And the British did not evacuate their forts in the northwest with all convenient speed, which would become a major source of tension, leading to the War of 1812. Despite these imperfections, the Treaty of Paris of 1783 remains a cornerstone of American history. It transformed a rebellion into a republic. It turned colonists into citizens. It was the final, formal act that brought the United States of America into existence, not just as an idea, but as a recognized nation among nations. It laid the foundation for the country's westward expansion and its eventual rise to a world power. So the next time you think about the American Revolution, don't just picture soldiers in red and blue. Picture 3 American diplomats in a room in Paris, armed not with muskets, but with intellect, courage, and an unshakable belief in their new nation, skillfully negotiating the very birth of the United States. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this deep dive into the Treaty of Paris interesting, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories from history. Let us know in the comments what other historical events you'd like us to cover. See you in the next video.